Next, we're going to be talking with Robert Christenson of the Fridley Historical Society, and we're going to be talking about the 75th anniversary of the Hayes School and some of the other activities that they have coming up. Okay, we're with Robert Christenson, president of the Fridley Historical Society, and we are at the headquarters for the Fridley Historical Society. And we are in a schoolhouse, and this schoolhouse is turning 75 years old this year. Tell me a little bit about the beginning of the school. Did Fridley have a need for schools 75 years ago? Were there schools already around?
Well, actually there was schools. This was District 23, and District 23 came into existence way back in the 1870s, I believe. There was an old school that was about 3 blocks from here, and that school burnt down in 1929. And that was 8 grades. The students that graduated from that school, very few of them went to high school. That was considered a complete education in the state of Minnesota. And then in 1931, they built a new school, which was this one, to replace the one that burned down. Just as a sidelight, I was born in Fridley, and my father was born in Fridley. And when I was born, he built our home on the foundation of the school that burned down. So District 23 school began with 8 grades, and there were about 47 students here.
And did it continue to grow after, how many years were students in the building?
The school operated for about 40 more years.
Okay.
When I started school here in 1942, they had reduced the number of grades from 8 to 4. Because Fridley was in a population boom at just starting in the early 1940s. And by the time that I graduated from this school in 1948, we got shipped all over the Twin Cities. I mean, I ended up going to Oakwood School in Columbia Heights, Columbia School. They took us to the Twin Cities Arms Plant. They took us to Minneapolis Marshall and other schools, and then finally ended up at Columbia Heights High School. The
building that we're in, from the outside, you might think it's a one-room schoolhouse, but there's 2 classrooms in here, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you were here, it was into 2 grades. Can I assume that it was two classes in each room, or?
That's right. There was one teacher. Mrs. Cook was in this room, and she had 1st and 2nd grade. And then in the other room, Mrs. Schmidt, for 1 year, taught 3rd and 4th grade. Then there was another teacher, actually before her, Mrs. Gallagher came in, and then it was Mrs. Schmidt that came in and taught those 2 grades. The students here totally filled both of these rooms, and so we were getting even close to capacity back in the 1940s. The reason it closed was we built another school right next door. And that was built in the 1960s. About 1964 was Hayes School was built. And then that school was destroyed in the tornado of 1965, and then it was rebuilt again. And actually we had in this school in 48 and 49, it was all 1st graders, which was an overflow from Hayes School. And then it became, in 1950, it became all a kindergarten.
Okay.
And it was the kindergarten school for a number of years. And then it turned over to district offices later, I think it was in the late 60s, early 70s, something like that.
And then eventually
it became a vacant building.
Okay, and then the Historical Society came into possession of it?
Well, our Historical Society didn't exist back then. In 1980, the School District 14 determined that this was excess property, and there was no use for the building. It was an older building, and so the plan was to deconstruct the building. Some of the residents said, well, before we do that, let's see if there's an alternative use for it. And so a committee was formed to look for alternative uses for this property. And finally they determined that it should be a historical society. And so that was organized during the early 1980s. And in 1985, the Fridley Historical Society was incorporated and began holding its meetings here, and then went through a process of totally rehabilitating this building, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to restore it.
Yeah, so obviously you guys have made a good home out of the building, and I know you've got lots of programs, including you have a regularly scheduled history conversation and the 75th anniversary of the schoolhouse is going to be scheduled for September, correct?
Correct. On September 11th, we'll have our 6th history conversation of the year. And what we do at our history conversations is we invite people from the community. For this one, those who either taught here, or were students here, or parents of students here, or worked here as janitors, whoever had an association with the school, to come to our history conversation. And then we invite them to tell their story, and we video record their story for our archives.
That sounds like a great event. And then anything else coming up that you'd like the audience to know?
Well, our next major event is going to take place on Monday, August 7th, and it's called August Fest. And this is our 11th annual August Fest, and it's a free admission event for the entire community or anybody in the metro area that wishes to attend. And we'll have the Fridley Dixieland Band here. We'll have a covered wagon from celebrating the 150th anniversary of Anoka County next year. We'll have a Fridley fire truck for the kids to meet the firemen and play on the fire truck. And then there will be, there'll also be a magician and clowns here. And we'll be selling brats and hamburgers and so forth. And then we'll be playing an 1860s style baseball game by the rules of 1860s. And there's a team called the Quick Steps that are in the uniforms of the 1860s, and they'll be playing city police and fire and administration on the ball field right behind the Fridley History Center.
So thanks, and if people want more information, is there a phone number they can call? Or,
they can call 763-571-0120, and that's a voicemail number, and so they can just leave their name and phone number, and any questions, we'll respond.
All right, well, thanks for the time, Robert.